Well, people are still on the way here. Harry, I bring a short devotion I created for this because master gardening is really a fascinating topic to me, and also quite biblical as well. I just tried to make a meaning out of this part. So I want to share a short devotion, 250 words. So I want to share this devotion, and then I want to turn to Harry for a brief introduction to our wonderful guest speaker, Jeff Jenks. So let's begin our time with this short devotion. I just going to read it and just enjoy this reflection, hopefully. As Christians, our spiritual journey can be beautifully paralleled with the process of master gardening. In Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 1 says, Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. This scripture reminds us of our connectedness with God and his role in nurturing our spiritual growth. Master gardening involves careful tending, pruning, and nourishing a plant to achieve their full potential. Similarly, our spiritual growth requires consistent effort, self-reflection, and divine guidance. As we cultivate our faith, we experience a process of refinement that helps us blossom into our true selves, bearing the fruits of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. You know the Bible verses here. In our spiritual garden, we face challenges such as weeds of doubt, pests of temptation, and droughts of despair. However, with a trust in God's grace, we can overcome these obstacles and foster a flourishing spiritual life. Like skilled gardeners, we must remain patient, diligent, and committed to cultivating our faith, guided by the master gardener, God. In doing so, we allow the seeds of Christian, our faith, to take root, grow, ultimately bear fruit in our lives and the lives of those around us. Let us pray together. Gracious God, our master gardener, we thank you for tending to our spiritual growth. We ask for your guidance in cultivating our faith, helping us to prune away doubt and resist temptation, to nourish our hearts and minds so we may bear the fruits of your spirit, and may our lives be a reflection of your love and grace, and may our faith blossom as a testament to your divine care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, hopefully it makes sense to you. Now I'm turned to Terry to make a brief introduction to our speaker. And also, just for your information, I turned on live caption for Marianne and Beth there. So hopefully we will all enjoy this presentation from Jeff. And also, I am recording this session, so people wanted to view it, those who cannot join us. And also, I earned this permission from our speaker, Jeff Jenks, as well. I want to turn to Terry.
Okay, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Jeff Jenks, our guest speaker today. Jeff has a very impressive background. He graduated from Princeton with a degree in electrical engineering, and he also has an MBA from Dartmouth College. His career has been mainly as a headhunter for companies to obtain engineers and scientists for startups as well as established firms. Jeff has been an active member at LAUMC since the time of Pastor John Dodson, and Jeff has chaired many committees. He has been part of many groups. He has organized over 10 men's church retreats at Mount Hermon, and made so many contributions to LAUMC. And we thank you for your many acts of service.
Thank you.
Jeff's mother was a gardener, and Jeff has been a gardener for over 20 years in Cupertino, and he's been a master gardener for 10 years. So with that, we thank you for being here today, and we welcome you, Jeff.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. Have any of you ever met a master gardener before? Just raise your hand if you have. Are any of you master gardeners? Raise your hand. Okay. Well, the Master Gardener Program, I have a short video describing the program. We have a mission to provide science-based information to home gardeners. The program has been around for a very long time, and it's essentially a volunteer program, and it's county-based throughout the country, actually. And I think all 50 counties in California have a Master Gardener Program. Sometimes they're combined. So I'm a Master Gardener, and I'm certified in the county of Santa Clara County. And so specifically, the information I provide is intended for people that grow stuff, plants, in Santa Clara County. Let's listen to this video, YouTube video, which will do a better job than I can describing the entire program. So let me go find it. And then we'll let it speak for itself. And you'll have to bear with me as I find it, because I have quite a few of them. Here we are. All right, this one does have closed captioning. And I don't know if that'll interfere with the closed captioning that's turned on here, but let's give it a try. If there is interference, please let me know and I can stop it. I think, Pastor, you need to make me a co-host.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Let's try it again.
Okay. Why aren't I able to share screen right now?
Let me do it again.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay.
All right, let's find the one I want. Yeah, here it is. All right, let's go full screen and play.
Master gardeners of Santa Clara County provide research-based horticultural information to residents. We do this through our website, classes, events, a help desk call center, demonstration gardens, spring and fall garden markets, and many other methods. Our organization is a partnership between the University of California, Cooperative Extension, and passionate volunteers in Santa Clara County. We are proud to provide advice you can trust. Master Gardener volunteers come from all parts of Santa Clara County. Our diverse members educate home gardeners and demonstrate sustainable gardening. Following months of initial training to become Master Gardeners, we continue to expand our knowledge through ongoing educational lectures and research. From Palo Alto to Gilroy and in between, demonstration gardens show you how to grow healthy, delicious vegetables in both summer and winter. For ornamental gardens, we display a wide range of Mediterranean climate plants for your low water garden. The Master Gardener Community Education Center in Marshall Cottle Park is an amazing 4 acres. Here we showcase many aspects of gardening, including native plants, vegetables, and fruit trees. The spring and fall garden markets at Marshall Cottle Park are annual extravaganzas with huge plant sales. They feature talks, horticultural information, and one-on-one interaction with master gardeners. Lectures, workshops, and presentations are given frequently at local libraries, youth and adult education centers, and demonstration gardens. A broad range of subjects are covered. Check the online calendar on our website for listings. There is something happening every month. Do you have a question about your garden, about a plant, a pest, or a problem? Call, email, or visit our help desk. Master gardeners research solutions and provide answers to your questions. Our monthly email gives you seasonal information on gardening and a list of upcoming classes and events. Sign up for the email on our website. The Master Gardener website, mgsantaClara.ucanr.edu, has information about upcoming events, a contact page for the help desk, and locations of demonstration gardens. On our website, you will find additional resources, documents, and links to other valuable gardening information. Santa Clara County is a spectacular environment for gardening. Master gardeners provide advice you can trust to help you be successful in your garden. We look forward to growing with you.
Okay, well, that was pretty long and pretty comprehensive. I guess we can ask if there are any questions. I'm not sure how we're going to handle questions. I guess you're all on mute, so that might be difficult. So why don't I just continue with the presentation today. The topic today was, what does it mean to be a master gardener? And I appreciated the great introduction by Pastor Jong. We are not God or gods. We're much less than that in some ways, but it is inspirational to me to imagine that God is at hand with all of the gardening we do. Sometimes I complain to my own organization that the science part of it kind of takes the art out of it, but actually that's something for you to put back in. And clearly there are many ways you can see God's hand in motion with gardening. My personal specialties have generally been focused on what we call edible plants. So in my 10 years with the Master Gardeners, or actually 20 years of gardening, I've given presentations on growing blueberries, which turn out to be very hard to grow in Santa Clara County. Also given presentations on how to grow tomatoes and chilies and peppers, which are relatively easy to grow in Santa Clara County. And I've certainly sat in on many, many more educational talks. One of the criteria for remaining certified is that we continue our education. So I've sat in on and learned a lot about the trees. Ornamentals is what we call flowers, and that's not an area that I'm particularly strong in, but it's one where everyone benefits from the beauty and magnificence of flowers. My presentation today is going to focus on houseplants, and actually it's not a presentation I've given before, so I created it especially for today. As you'll see, I will show you my houseplants, and one person said, "Gee, Jeff, you don't have very many." And I go, "No, I don't, but the ones I have are all very important to me." So we'll get to that in a moment. The other thing I want to start with is, because we're a science organization, what's the definition of a houseplant? Well, that's pretty simple. It's a house you grow, it's a plant you grow inside. So I'm going to show you another website, which is not a Master Gardener website, that specifies what they think. And this is actually a UK website, so I probably should have found one in Santa Clara County. Well, actually, I did find one in Santa Clara County, and I'll show that one after this one. Let me show you this website that talks about what this organization thinks are the most popular houseplants in 2023. And as you're watching, this is not a video, this is simply a website. And as you look at it, I'll ask you to keep track of whether you have any of these yourself. So here we are. So I don't expect you to read everything as it goes by on this page. That would be too much. This was one that I found, and actually when I searched on trending houseplants in 2023, I probably found a dozen websites. I picked this one because it seemed to agree with all the others. But if you look closely at the URL, you see this is actually one that was written for the United Kingdom, Great Britain, however you want to call it. But it is by House Beautiful, and that has been in the past a popular magazine for people that want to grow plants in their houses, in their homes. I'm going to skip to the pictures mostly. The first one here that they're ranking #1 is the peace lily. And it turns out I have a peace lily. It hasn't flowered yet. So I'll show you the picture of the flower later. And, you know, I'm not trying to sell you anything. So this website obviously is now if you want to buy something, but how many, well, quick raise of hands. I won't be able to see it, but I can see a strip of pictures. Do many of you have the peace lily? You may know the story behind it, and the peace lily is very popular, but the reason for its popularity is one that I really don't want to get into right now. But let's go on. This is the spider plant. How many of you have the spider plant? I know Pastor John showed me that he had one. His didn't look quite as good as this one, but I guess it says it's the most adaptable. It died. And they can put up with quite a lot of neglect. So I'm afraid Pastor John is now falling into the category of giving it too much neglect. Here's aloe vera. The one thing I'd comment on here when I see this one is you might know it has a very spiny leaves. And one of the criteria for a houseplant is you don't want it to be something that your pets, your grandchildren, or your children, or your people that you live with might get entangled with. And so this one might not be a good choice if you have a cat, for example, that wants to shed its fur on your aloe vera. Or if you have grandchildren that are very young, because they could get pricked by this. Another thing to consider is that I don't think any of these plants in particular are toxic, but before you buy one, you should ask the nursery, is there any chance that anything in the plant is toxic? Because, you know, a dog eating a leaf and getting very sick would be a real disappointment if it was a pet or a visiting pet. Tall house plants you typically see in office environments. You know, I always remember the rubber plant, which is not on this list, but this one's called the Swiss cheese plant. That's because of the way the leaves are structured. It seems like every office I worked in, which wasn't very many in my work life, I mostly worked at home, had one of these in the corner. And the good news about all house plants is they generally don't want direct sunlight. So they do well in houses. And while they do want sunlight, they want it to be indirect, meaning they want it to bounce off something before it gets to the plant. So while my house plants are in a south-facing window of my kitchen, there's a porch roof to keep them from getting any of the direct sun from the southern exposure. The only sun they get is in the early morning when the sun rises and comes through the side of the window that they're in. The other thing most houseplants want is humid air. And that's probably the biggest challenge in California, because particularly in Santa Clara County, we're headed for some very warm and dry weather for the next few months. And so the plants have a tendency not to like that. And a mistake people make is to water them. Most houseplants, as we're going to learn, don't want very much water. And some of them that we're going to cover, like aloe vera, is a succulent, and it doesn't want any water. If you watered it once a month, that would probably be enough. But if it starts to shrivel in the leaves, here's an example. I had some succulents outside in my porch area that I left outside over the winter. And I looked at them, and I just recently took them where I'd hid them in the corner where they got no sun. I said, boy, you guys look really terrible. And they hadn't been watered in 6 months. So I gave them some water, not too much. And one of them came right back, which was really nice. I was really impressed at how quickly, because a lot of times they don't come back as quickly. Here's something this author thinks is a trend. It's not something that I have done. I do know that there are members of the church community that have in the past done what I call arrangements in small bottles or small clear plastic containers. The ones that I have actually was done by Karen Smith, and she layered in some sand, then she put in some beach items, small, and then she planted a couple of succulents. And she did that over 10 years ago. One of the succulents is still alive, and you'll see that in my picture of where mine are. And then this one, I don't like the name much. I'm not too keen on snakes. It turns out that as a master gardener, we also have to be educated about all the critters in Santa Clara County. And critters include all the insects, snakes, which there aren't too many, gophers, squirrels. And the other day I looked out at my porch and I said, oh, the squirrel has gotten so aggressive. He came right up to my sliding glass door window and decided he wanted to bury a nut in one of my planters. So he spread the soil all over my porch. I went, gee. Well, it's actually a little bit better than some years, because in most years it's been a rat. And I won't go into that today because we're not going to talk about that, because we're talking about houseplants. If you end up with any of the critters in your house, though, you have a much bigger problem, and I'm not the person to turn to. There are services that can come and rid your house of critters. Grow your own. Yeah, this is popular. We're not going to cover this today. Growing mostly herbs. Herbs are really weeds that taste good. You can grow these, and they might want a little more sun than a houseplant. And here's another one whose name doesn't really, well, it's certainly religious, but not the kind of religion we want to have. Oh, and then there's the story of ivy. We could have a whole session on ivy and how much you don't want to have it in your yard, but we won't cover that today either. And then cacti and succulents. We will talk a little more about succulents and cacti. Cacti are long-lived and occasionally bloom, and they do make good houseplants, but again, you want them to put them in a place where people won't get stuck by the prickers. So that's a quick overview of some of the houseplants that are most popular, according to the author who wrote that article. Let's talk a little more about just how you grow houseplants, because that's kind of what our whole purpose is as master gardeners, is to help people grow stuff. And let me go to another master gardener site. Early in my time with the master gardeners, I did take a strong interest in the web products that we have. In fact, at one time I was the webmaster. And as the webmaster, I created quite a few of the pages here, and I'm not showing any that are mine, but at another time I could. Let me show you another one of our web pages, and then we're going to go to, it was mentioned in the talk about our program that we have something called a monthly tips newsletter. And if you go to our website, which we're not going to do right at the moment, is you can sign up to get that. And I certainly have signed up to get it, and it comes on the 1st of the month. And one of our volunteers is in charge of that. Let's go here just so you can see what the web page looks like. So this is one of the tips. We have tips for every month. And here's a whole list of stuff we could have talked about today. but we're not going to. I would click on this, but I know where it goes, and it goes to a place that has a presentation. Well, let's have some fun and let's just click on it. What you might see here is this is over an hour, so we're going to stop that one. Instead, we're going to go to a different one, which is only 7 minutes long, which talks about something I did in preparation for this presentation, which is that I went and I added to my collection an African violet, and I'm going to show you kind of what the steps are to do that, and then I'm going to show you the one I did. So let me go to that video, and that video does have closed captioning again. So let me find that one. Yeah, here we are. Let's try this. And again, I'm taking advantage of the fact that our volunteers have created all of these videos, and they're really quite good. So let's take a look at this one. Here we go. Full screen, and here we go. And this one's only 7 minutes long, so it won't be too long.
Hi, I'm Laura, a Master Gardener volunteer with the University of California Cooperative Extension in Santa Clara County, California. Houseplants can bring a lot of joy to our lives, but sometimes they need to be repotted to invigorate them and bring out new growth. This is a galvanized watering can. Here is a soil knife. These are bypass pruning shears. These are waterproof rubber gloves for cleaning. These are gardening gloves. This is a water pail or bucket, and this is a scrub brush. This is ordinary household bleach. These are empty pots. You can use terracotta, or you can use glaze. You'll want good quality potting soil. Need to repot your plant? Some signs you may see are roots growing from the bottom of it. Here the plant has risen out of the pot because the root ball is so bound. This plant has old soil that's deteriorated over time. You need to repot this plant with new soil. You can use an old pot that you've got lying around, but you need to clean it first. To clean the pot, we're going to immerse it in our bleach solution and scrub it. We're ready to uppot. First thing you want to do is add some soil to your pot. I tap it down gently so there's no air pockets. It's difficult to get your plant out. You can use a soil knife and run it around the edge to loosen the roots. Now we're going to inspect our roots and see if we need to make any corrections. We're going to remove these roots at the top because they're winding around. And we'll tease out these roots as well, so that they have a chance to grow into the new soil. Now we're going to put our plant back into the pot. We're going to fill this to the top of the root ball. You want to leave space at the top so that you can easily water the plant. Here's another plant that may need repotting. Now we're going to inspect our root ball. As you can see, this one is extremely root bound and needs to have some pruning done. We'll take off these roots at the top. And we will clip these roots at the bottom so that they can grow out into the new soil. You can see some of them are quite difficult to get. Here's the same pot. Let's add fresh budding soil. We're putting new soil back into the old pot to refreshen and reinvigorate the plant. Now we're going to set our plant back into the pot. As you can see, we've opened up the roots so that they can now expand into the new soil. You want to fill the soil up to the top of the plant, to the root ball, but leave enough space so that you can water easily. This plant is rather sad. It wants to be divided. Divide the plant, lift it gently out of the pot and pull it apart. Now we're going to put soil into our two pots that we'll be transplanting into. Trim off some of these dead roots before we put them in the new container. And some of these leaves too. Now we're going to put our newly trimmed plant into its new pot. After you've repotted the plants, make sure to water them well. So that's how you can change a pot for your houseplant. Thank you for joining us today.
All righty. So that was a video that was made quite a few years ago, but I thought that was an excellent one. And it's one that I found by searching on our website. And all of our videos eventually made it to our YouTube channel. And I think almost all of them offer closed captioning. So that was a good thing to have. Let me show you kind of what I did in preparation for this presentation, which is I looked at my inventory of houseplants, which I'm going to show you later. And I said, gee, I have room for one more. So I went ahead and I went out and bought the materials and pretty much did exactly what she just described, but I did it for an African violet. And just before I do that, and just before this presentation, I said, you know, I want to be sure I know what I'm talking about today, so I better be sure and find out if an African violet really is a plant from Africa. So I said, I'm going to do a quick study, a quick search. And one of the things I do when I do my searches is I search for African violets, and then I put the following letters after the Google search term. I put UCANR. Let me repeat those letters. UCANR. That stands for University of California Agricultural and Natural Resource Department, which is the part of the URL for all the Master Gardener websites. So let me share with you what I found when I put in African violets, UCANR. And I won't ask you to read this whole thing, but I just want you to quickly read maybe the first paragraph or so, because it describes better than I can what's involved with African violets as houseplants. And here we go. So here's what I found. And this was written by a person who's a master gardener. They have a newspaper in Tulare, Kings counties. Houseplants don't care what county they're in, so this is certainly applicable to our county. And I guess the most relevant part of this article is what I wanted to be sure of, was that they are native to Central and East Africa. And they are very popular. They are one of the houseplants that my mother had as I was growing up. And she was very proud of them. And so I've carried on that tradition for 50 plus years of almost always having an African violet houseplant somewhere in my house. The rest of this article talks about propagating them, and that's not a topic for today. So let's go back to showing you what I did for this presentation in terms of the materials I purchased. And whoops. Yeah. I purchased some materials to do this project. Let me go find them. One second. So where is that? And there they are. Here we are. So as we always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here are the materials I bought. Let me use my wonderful skills at drawing to point out what each item is. So right here there are 2 pots, and these are very specific pots for African violets. And I'm showing you both the pot that the plant goes in, and then this is the reservoir for the water, because it turns out African violets really don't want their roots to ever be soaking. And African violets never want to be watered on their leaves. So this particular pot is wonderful because when you assemble it, it looks like this, and you put the water in this one. But first you turn this over and you put in the mix that I bought, which is called African Violet Mix, which generally you can find in the local nurseries or you can find it online. African violets even have their own fertilizer, which I didn't use initially with the water I put in here, but I could have. And I did wear gloves. And these are not gardening gloves, but as she said in her presentation, these are full rubber gloves, dishwashing gloves. And the reason for that is that, and I also wear a mask, a light mask, meaning it's really not a good, healthy thing to do to inhale soil, nor is it really that great to. Now, you will read anecdotal evidence of, oh, it's really great to get your hands dirty in the soil. Well, not so much. We actually have to take a class in soils, and I've taken a number of classes in soils, and it's a very complex subject. And every soil that's created for one of these bags has a lot of additives to it, including fertilizers sometimes. And since African violets are not native, the thing you could never do is plant an African violet. Here's the seedling I bought. You could never plant that in our native soil. How many of you know what our native soil is? Our native soil in Santa Clara County is clay, also called mud, also called fine silt, also called really, really sticky, and turns into adobe bricks when it dries out. And do plants grow in it? Yes, the native plants of Santa Clara County do. Can I even name one native plant of Santa Clara County? Maybe, but I didn't prepare for this class that way. The native plants that grow best in our clay are the grasses that right now in my backyard are about 2.5 feet tall, making a huge mess out of my ornamental landscaping, because now I have to wade through these 2.5 foot tall grasses that are weeds. I don't want them there. And they do really great in our native clay, which of course, since I planted other things in that soil, it's been amended with some really great rich compost as well as rich organic material. And our grasses say, well, this is even great. I can grow even more now. So here's a repeat of the steps I followed here. You know, I put the soil in this part of the planter. Then I put the plant gently into the soil. I added probably a few drops of water to this soil, which was very dry. And then I filled this thing, it turns out about halfway. And then I put it all together. And let me show you the final result. So here's the final result, is right here. Shouldn't be a surprise, but there it is. So, you know, I took all those materials, I put them together, and then I put the plant in there. And one of the nice things about African violets, and one of the reasons they're so popular as a house plant, when they flower, and I bought this one flowered, they keep their flowers for a very long time, literally months. And so by comparison, I just noticed today that all of my tulips have lost their flowers. And they kept their flowers probably for almost 2 or 3 weeks, which was pretty good. I mean, they took a long time to finally flower, but now they're just, you know, all they got left is the stem, and the flowers are on the ground. And this African violet will probably stay in flower for another 2 or 3 months. So that's one of the beauties of that. So let me show you kind of where it sits in my house, because we are talking about houseplants. Let me find that picture. And then I'll have to describe what the picture is showing you. Let's see, here it is. Now, this picture is the counter in my kitchen. And let me get my drawing pen out. There we go. So what are we looking at? Well, we're looking out a south-facing bow window. And this is a countertop. Someone said, "Is that dirt, Jeff?" I said, "No." We chose a granite top for our kitchen. And it has a number of really keen features, particularly for someone like me, which is, there's a phrase that's been used many times, is it doesn't show the dirt. Well, this one, you can just leave an entire lasagna spread on it and you'll never know it was there, particularly when it starts to turn brown. But here's what I have. So it's hard to see this. I don't know. Can I make this picture bigger? I don't know if I can. Here's a succulent. You can barely see it. And this is the one I mentioned before, where Karen Smith had a clear plastic container. She put some sand in it. She put some shells in it. And then she planted a couple of really nice succulents in an arrangement. And I've kept this now for over 10 years. Now, these succulents don't flower, but they're pretty, and they don't need any sun, and they don't need any water. Practically, I mean, I water them probably every 3 months. Here's the African violet that we just showed you that I planted for this presentation. And then I have an orchid, and it's hard to see the orchids in this case. We could have a whole session on orchids. Orchids are typically, and everything here except the most recent one that I purchased, were generally gifts. And as I recall growing up as an adult, that one of the more popular, this was actually a gift, and it's shaped like a Valentine. So this was a Valentine's Day gift. Now, there are many challenges for growing orchards or orchids. One of which is that when you buy them in the store, they have this beautiful stem going up with all these pretty flowers hanging out. And that looks fantastic. Well, when you put them in my environment here, after those flowers have died and that stem gets cut off because it's died, then the leaves will stay. And in fact, if you're lucky and you keep the roots moist, it will flower again. Maybe these actually have been here many years. And when they flower, they put out a spike, what's called the flower spike. Now, given that they're all sun seekers, the flower spike follows the sun as well. So instead of going up, it goes straight horizontally. Now, if you're an professional orchid keeper, you will put in a stake and a clip to try and get it to go straight up, which is why the ones in the stores have been grown by professional orchid people, and they train the stem up. Well, that takes too much patience, so I don't do that. I just let the stem go straight out, and none of these are in bloom right now. But there was a time in my life when I took pictures of orchids, flowers. And do any of you have orchids? Well, as you probably know, the flower of an orchid is one of the most beautiful things on earth. I mean, they're spectacular. And they tend to keep for weeks at a time once they get going, because they put out a stem and then they'll put out multiple flowers on each side of the stem. Now, I'm simplifying and talking about what I'll call the most common orchids. There are master gardeners who specialize in orchids, and there are certainly nurseries that specialize in orchids. There are people who specialize in orchids. Orchids are tropical plants. That's why they have to be grown inside. They do want some amount of sun, but not much. And their roots, you can see it on this one. Here's another orchid. And this one's in some kind of a dessert dish that's clear plastic. And it's actually got two orchids. One of them is growing this way. The leaves are, and there's another one growing this way. And each of them may put out a flower stem. None of them are flowering right now. And there's my other African violet. So I have two of them. African violets have purple, pink and white, beautiful flowers again in clusters, a different form of flowering. And then here's my peace lily, which was a recent gift. It has yet to flower. And all of these are looking in my backyard inside, but you're looking at my backyard with kind of a clipped off view. This is the sink faucet right here. So that's kind of my collection of indoor houseplants. So you can see I had none of, except for one, I had almost none of the ones that are, quote, the most popular. We're getting close to the end here. You're probably all relieved to hear that. Let's see what I've got. I've got a couple more pictures. And what I find is that pictures are very popular. Let me show you a picture of the peace lily flower. Because this is a little bit of a repeat because you showed it in the most popular ones, but it's worth showing you again. So there's the beautiful flower. And it is one of the most popular houseplants. The last picture I'll show you actually is relevant to the fact that I got this as a gift at Easter from the church. And I had to go look up what kind of plant it was because I'm not an ornamental expert. And I liked it so much that I replaced a plant that had been in my front porch for over 20 years. But I like this one so much better that I put it in place of it. And let me show you what that looks like. So you'll see my front door. There. It's called the calancho. How many of you have a calancho? Yep. Well, it's very popular, almost a house plant. It's doesn't need much water. It flowers for a long time. I pulled out the other plant that was in here for many, many years. And by the way, being a master gardener, I'm embarrassed to say that these two things up here are artificial plastic plants. Nothing really does well hanging in air like this, except epiphytes that they don't do well in California. An epiphyte is a plant that gets all of its, well, it gets all of its moisture from the air. And since we don't have much, and then this is really just a camouflage for my camera right here so I can see people coming in. But this is a real plant. This is a Kalanchoe. And I'm really pleased with how it's doing. And it's a really nice addition. I used to have a real gangly geranium there, which I didn't, it's now in the recycle bin. So I think that comes to a close, my presentation. Let me just see, is there anything else that I had as a picture? Because I love the pictures. Oh yeah, last thing I want to show you is the use of succulents as houseplants in this beautiful arrangement that was done by the master gardeners. Again, there's a section of the master gardeners that arrange these succulents. And you can do it yourself. And you'll see these outside the grocery stores. You'll see them sometimes, almost all, in the nurseries, of course. And there was a time when I could name all these succulents, but not today. The one right here that's green, I think, is the one that I have in that clear plastic thing. But I do have a beautiful arrangement of succulents in my backyard that I don't have a picture of. And I did learn the name of it because the last name is grandiflora. And I put it in what was called a fire pit in my backyard on the pool deck. And of course, it was designed to be in the south-facing, most intense sun on Earth. And the beauty of a succulent is it can take all the sun you can throw at it. And you don't need to water it. You don't even need to pay attention to it. And it's done fantastic. And I don't have a picture of it right now, but I'm getting pretty close to the end of our hour. I guess I can stop here and ask if there are any questions or things that you'd like to discuss at another time. I can offer to those that want it an outline of this presentation in text and pictures, which would be different than you having to listen to it again for 50 minutes. And I can email it to you. Go ahead, Trish.
What soil, or because I think that would be fun to have. I don't have a lot of time to tend to them, to have it on the kitchen table like that pretty little thing with the succulents. What kind of soil, or is it rocks, or?
You're right that there's a very specific soil for succulents. It is mostly perlite, I think, as I recall. You can search for that on our website.
Okay.
And you can typically buy it in a store, but you're right, it is not that heavily amended with organic material type of soil. It's very much a rocky. Perlite comes to mind. Anyone else know what the primary ingredient is in succulent soil? Really and the interesting thing about succulents is the roots are really fine. They're really pretty fragile. And they don't want much water because the plant stores all of the water it needs in its leaves. So in the past, when I did some work with succulents, I would go out and buy a bag of succulent soil. One bag will go a long way. The important thing about a succulent planting is the container. Because that's the art form of making the thing beautiful. Is putting them in a terracotta pot really doesn't do them justice. So if someone sends you as a gift, in the old days we used to say, if someone sent you an ashtray, we don't do that anymore, but you turn the ashtray into the planter. Any other questions?
Sue and Steve have questions for you.
Well, go ahead.
Okay,
Sure
Jeff,
thing.
Thanks for this so much. I missed the first part and I understand I could see a recording, which is exciting. I have a very cool orchid window, which is north facing, and I've had really good success with the orchids reblooming now up to, these are a couple years old now, which is terrific. I have never transplanted any of them into bigger containers. Do you think that's wise? I've also read that you should never do that. So I was wondering.
Yeah,
what you think about that.
orchids are funny that way. They don't like to be transplanted. They actually love their roots to be crowded. And therefore, I have tried to transplant an orchid with miserable failure. So really just leave them, they are. Now, I fertilize my orchid about once a year with that African violet mix, which is like 7 drops in a pint of water.
Mhm.
And they don't get a ton of sun. You do cut off the dead leaves and you cut off the dead spikes. The one gift I got once was a fragrant orchid. And if I read the instructions carefully enough, it would have told me that it was an annual, not a perennial. So it put out an enormous amount of beautiful scent. Scents are always tricky because sometimes people go, that's not for me. But no, I wouldn't transplant an orchid.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that.
Too hard. Steve Lagna, did you want to say something?
Yeah, hi, Jeff. This is Steve and Donna here.
Yeah.
You have a generalized question and a specific question. The specific question is, how do you get that peace lily to bloom? We have one that's in a prominent location in our house, and it's not bloomed since we first got it. That's the specific question.
Well,
The generalized question is, we always seem to have trouble with either overwater or underwater of plants. And is there any generalized statements you can make about what each condition looks like and how do you get the just right water?
well, you've asked me 2 questions for which I have no good answer because I too have not found a way to get my peace lily to bloom, and I got the peace lily in October. So that's 6 months. Now, I give it more water than it probably wants, but one thing that's true with all plants, they never want their roots to sit in water. So you need to let the water drain out the bottom of the pot. There's nothing that smells worse than a bunch of rotted roots. And then the second question again was how much to water? Well, that's an art form question, which is I tend to overwater. Now, there are some plants, particularly the edible plants, that generally respond favorably to too much water, with one major exception, which are tomatoes. I have written papers and given talks on blossom end rot because I've had so much of it that I've ruined all my tomato plants every year by overwatering. And that's not a subject for today, but finding the right amount of water for tomatoes so far has eluded me in over 20 years. Now, early on, I produced between 40 and 60 pounds of tomatoes every season. Most recently, for a lot of reasons, I almost have stopped growing them altogether. Now, I can point to a lot of things I think might be the problem, watering being one of them, but that's for another day. So the answer is, take, for example, cucumbers. You can probably overwater them. They don't care. They just get really big. Or our favorite, what we call the baseball bat. The baseball bat of vegetables. Which one's that? Who knows what that is?
Zucchini.
Zucchini, there you go, right.
Yeah,
The zucchini will get huge.
yeah.
And that's for another day too. But zucchini will pretty much take all the water you want to give them. They can get blossom end rot too if you work hard enough. The best solution for all watering problems typically is that you don't do it yourself, that you calculate how much water it needs. You get a drip irrigation system, which I have done many times. You put that in, and then you just keep an eye on it. Now, the scientific answer is, well, you need to calculate the evapotranspiration of the plant and give it the water it needs, which is impossible to do. And the other thing though is when you plant stuff, you might say, well, let me plant all the stuff that needs a certain amount of water on the same circuit for my drip irrigation system, which most people can't figure that out either. So for example, I have a section of my garden for raspberries. And raspberries are pretty easy to grow, sort of. The ones I have are not really happy with the situation they have right now. And I think I need to go out and water them after this talk, because the other thing is a tricky thing is, well, how much fertilizer do they need? Well, when you're growing edible plants, some of them absolutely need a lot of fertilizer, relatively speaking, like tomatoes. But if you're growing ornamental plants, maybe not so much. For example, tulip bulbs. Should you fertilize? Nope. All the nutrients the plant needs are in the bulb. So how are we doing on time? It's 12 o'clock, and this is a 1 hour session, or? I can still take questions. I'm here.
Yeah, maybe Miriam, you have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we just wanted to ask if you recommend using bone meal in with houseplants.
No, I don't think you need to use bone meal. Some of these things are kind of, yeah, I mean, the answer is probably not, although every plant has different needs. So I don't want to generalize too much. But most of the soil package, the soil makers typically will put a little bit of fertilizer in the soil mix. The other thing that the nurseries do, which can really drive you crazy, is the nursery grows the plant and it ships it. You know, the big farms grow them and they ship them by truck up to the nursery stores. And then the nursery stores go, okay, put it out, you know, in the right amount of shade or the amount of sun. And by the way, throw a handful of fertilizer in there so the thing looks really good so we can sell it.
Oh.
And so then they hire the local person who they give that instruction to, who says, oh, I should throw a handful of fertilizer every time I water it, right? No. I once transplanted a Japanese maple, which I got in a 50-gallon container. But believe me, that's really hard to move around unless you have a big truck, which I didn't. And when I took it out of the container, the entire root ball was covered with fertilizer. Now, they wanted to keep the plant green to sell it. They didn't want it even to be deciduous. So you can force a plant not to drop its leaves, which doesn't make it very happy.
Yeah.
So the answer is, the other thing that we used to give as advice, I guess I still would, although I didn't quite follow it. Oh, I might have one more picture. No, I don't have it ready. Let me see if I can show you this one. Well, no, I can't. Sorry. So I have a blueberry patch.
Oh.
It's a large planter and I've had it for over 10 years. Quick statistic, I started with 17 bare root blueberries. Don't buy bare root blueberries to start. Of which there are now, after 10 years, 2 left. So I've lost 15. However, I still have 12 blueberries. Why is that, Jeff? I've replaced them. My newest experiment this year, though, is to grow blueberries in pots. So I found a couple of beautiful pots at Yamagami's. You're not supposed, as a master gardener, I didn't say that. We're never supposed to endorse any specific company. However, I found the pot I wanted at Yamagami's in Cupertino. I live in Cupertino. And I don't know how much time we have. I sent myself that picture. Hold on a second.
Sure.
It's a nice picture of my most recent planting of a blueberry, but the picture itself was over 5 megabytes, which is a technical term to see, meaning it may take a long time to get here. Actually, I have to keep talking because I don't think it's going to get here. But anyway, then I bought 2 blueberries. Now, I'm what I call price conscious about plants. And I've actually consider myself an expert at what not to do to grow blueberries in Santa Clara County. Having said that, I do grow blueberries, and I eat blueberries every morning for breakfast, every morning, except this morning, but every morning. And I know, here's an interesting fun fact about blueberries. What country in South America grows blueberries, but does not have blueberries in its cuisine? Peru. Peru grows blueberries, yet the native Peruvian cuisine have no blueberries in their cuisine. What country grows the most blueberries in Central America? Mexico. Well, blueberries, don't they want cold weather? Well, if you get to, I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 feet in Mexico, you get wonderful blueberry growing conditions, kind of. What's the greatest pest for growing blueberries? Anybody? What pest eats most of your blueberries before you pick them? Birds. How do you protect from birds? It's impossible. I have tried every mechanism there is. I'm going to try another one this year, if I have the time, which is I'm going to build out of PVC pipe some hexagonal structures that I can put over the blueberry pots I bought, because those plants are really pretty small, and then wrap bird netting around them. But that's a pretty good sized project, and I have such a long list of projects that I may or may not get to it. Any other questions? Yes, Lori.
May I ask what you see zoning is versus sunset zoning for our area?
Well, I should know the answer to that, but I'm not sure I do. I'm a little rusty on that question. You're begging an interesting issue, though, which is, plants are designated for what zones they can grow in. California actually has all the zones, the state of California. Santa Clara County
I mean, our area. Yes.
Yeah, Santa Clara County is one particular zone, but I'd have to go look it up.
I think it's 9B.
It might, yeah, that sounds
9B.
about right.
Yeah, I think it's
9B.
9 too. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, of course, what you're begging an issue to talk about is, oh, what about climate change? Could that have an effect? And the answer is absolutely yes. And actually, a bigger effect has been the drought, which, by the way, is officially over, I think. Well, it is, but that's a whole nother topic. And we get frequent talks about drought conditions and what to do about them. And I have a big backyard, and I do know that right now, with the temperatures coming up over the 80s, that everything is growing faster. By the way, all plants, pretty much, and that's not completely true. Most plants respond favorably to warmer temperatures.
Jungs.
Some plants actually will stop growing if the temperatures get too hot. Yes, Mary Beth.
Jeff, I have a quick question. I know a lot of people, different people that work with plants, and some of them really are religious about using one of those small smart meters to see if it's moist or dry. And
Yep.
other people say they don't work at all. So I wonder which boat you're on.
I'm kind of in the middle, which is what the master gardener's answer to that would be is dig into the soil to about a 2-inch depth and put your thumb in there and see if it's moist.
Yeah.
You know, the big issue has to do with the soil structure. How well does it drain?
Mhm.
And given what I said before about clay, clay doesn't drain.
Nope.
So in my blueberry planter, I have this really nice amended soil for about 1.5 feet, and then you hit solid clay. So the blueberries kind of go, hey, I love this amended acid-loving. Blueberries are acid-loving soil plants. I really love this, but the clay I want nothing to do with. If my roots sit in clay, they'll rot and I'll die. So how much water do you give it? Well, you give it enough to keep the soil moist in the root zone, but not so much that there's a layer of water at the clay zone. And figuring that out is mostly trial and error. Any other questions? Terry Morrison.
Hi, I thought you were supposed to put rocks or shells or something in the bottom of pots to help the drainage. No?
No, never. No, that's a common misperception. It's one that
Okay.
the master gardeners will always tell you not to do. The one thing you put at the bottom of the pot, which I didn't see in the video, is you can put what they call the bug screen.
Mhm.
They sell these little discs
Right. Yeah.
that are, you know, screens to keep the bugs out and let the water through.
Mhm.
Those are absolutely a very good idea, particularly, and if I can find this, see if that picture came through. Yeah, here it is. Let me get this picture up. Yeah, there we go. Let me show you this picture. Because that will both answer the question and tell you that I absolutely did this. Here's my backyard. Oops, there it is. And then you see the 2 blueberry planters I bought. Aren't those pretty?
Yes.
One has a hummingbird on it. The other has a butterfly on it. And I really like those. And then I followed the same steps we just talked about. I bought the planters. I bought the soil, which is acid-loving soil mix because they're blueberries. I bought 2 blueberry bushes, and I carefully reviewed the presentations I give on which varieties of blueberries do well in Santa Clara County. And the short answer is Southern High Bush. And here's a quick pointer on buying blueberry plants. Be very, 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 very careful to buy them at wholesale at the large big box stores, the names of which start with a C. Because here's what they do. They say, okay, we're going to sell blueberries this year in our big stores. So we're going to go pick up all the plants up in Minnesota, drive them down to California and say, here, these are for sale at a really good price. Well, the plants that grow well in Minnesota don't grow well in Santa Clara County, particularly blueberries. What's that about, Jeff? Well, blueberries are a fruit, and what they need is a certain number of chill hours. And that's something that is specified for each variety. How many chill hours do we get in Santa Clara County? Well, it depends. This year, we might actually get a few more because we've had such a cold April, but that actually doesn't count. Anyway, the answer is somewhere between 300 and 500. What do the ones in Minnesota want? 1,500 to 3,000 to 5,000. What does that mean? Well, that means that they aren't going to produce any berries at all. In fact, they're all just going to fail. So that really good price you got at that big box store starts with a C. It's 5 letters. Maybe I got that wrong. It's not going to do well. So I bought these 2 at a local. Actually, I bought these at, I'm not wearing my Master Gardener thing. I bought these at Summerwinds, I think. I like their choices. And I looked up, well, I used to know really well which of the blueberry farms were my preference. And I bought both of these from them. And that name, I can't recall immediately. So then I bought the acid-loving soil mix. I put in the little disc to keep the bugs out, because you can see I put these both on a tile. Well, why did I do that? Because I didn't want roots from all the other plants. On the arbor, there are 2 bougainvillea. Bougainvillea love to grow in California. They love to send out roots down the water lines. They love to creep into the pots, just as trees do. So what happens is that the plant root will go up into the drainage hole and then circle the bottom of the pot, suck all the water out of the pot for its own use, and your plant will die. So my trees in the back here, this is a beautiful pine whose name I can't remember at the moment that badly needs to be pruned.
Aleppo.
I do know the name, and that's not it, but
Okay.
it's a vase shaped fir tree, a spruce. It'll come to me. It's actually a volunteer. It's now 15 years old. Its parent is across the street in my neighbor's house, and it's about 50 feet off the ground above the neighbor's house. These two trees are bay trees. This is a blueberry as well. That's one of the originals right there. Can you see my cursor, or do I need to get my pen?
No, we can see it.
You can see my cursor. That's an original blueberry. These are the two new ones. That's a blueberry right there. The rest of the stuff are weeds. There are actually two Satsuma orange trees in the back here that haven't done well, partly because of the root intrusion from this guy here and the bay trees. A lesson learned that I learned as a master gardener is I used to have 4 bay trees in the backyard. Before I became a master gardener, every summer I'd say, boy, I'm going to water you guys. They said, well, that's great, Jeff, but I'm going to get root rot and die on you. And they did. One of these bay trees, I've lived here for 30 years. One of these bay trees was knocked down by another tree in a big storm. The neighbor's tree came over and knocked the other one down. I winched it back up, attaching the winch to a telephone pole. And it survived, and it's still doing quite well. And this is a sculpture that actually goes with the wind. Anyway, so that's a picture of my backyard. And I'm now way over the timing.
Oh, well, it's 12:18, but I'm very impressed with our participant here. Still 26 people staying here. I mean, Jeff,
Yeah,
you're so.
I'm still here. I'm still willing to answer any questions.
Actually, our time is almost up right now. And then, Jeff, you offer your resources to share with our team, like a PDF?
Yeah, the best way for me to send you something would be for you to tell Pastor Jong that you would like an email from me.
Right.
With
some people ask me about the website resources as well.
Well, the best website, of course, is the Master Gardener website, MG Santa Clara at ucanr.edu.
Yeah, I will edit that in my email.
Yeah,
too.
that's in the URLs. In the PDF, I would send as an attachment as a summary and what I used to create this presentation.
Yeah, I mean, with Jeff's permission, I have recorded this whole sessions, and we will edit and then send a link to all of you so that you can review this session.
In my experience, if I send you this 1+ page overview, then you can select what you want to look at again, and you won't have to wait through 50 minutes of me blathering. I've given over-hour presentations on blueberries that are actually still on the YouTube channel.
We save that part for part 2 next time.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's another thing. Send Pastor John any of your requests for other topics in gardening that you'd like me to prepare. Some I would have to prepare myself, but most I probably could find in our website. And we also have our quote private collection.
My wife is a really big fan of succulent things, and I have
succulents
today. And then Jeff, you helped me to understand why my succulent in my office died recently, because I have treated them as a tomatoes or a cucumber, as water them.
Too much water. Yeah, succulents. If you water them every 6 months, that's fine. Oh, and the other thing I do grow is strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, oranges, lemons, limes.
Oh yeah, I know you're. I tasted.
I may this year grow some tomatoes and the warm season vegetables, but right now I'm behind. Actually, yesterday I got the fence that blew down that protects my vegetable garden from critters.
Oh, this is a new world.
It got put up, it got re-put up just yesterday. It blew down in January.
This is a small glimpse of what you do, Jeff. So I think it's really,
Yes, and I thank you all for being.
thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
What an
Thank
excellent
you so much.
Thanks so much,
Yeah,
Jeff.
happy gardening. The other thing to be really careful about is the sun. Wear lots of protection, especially on your face and your hands. And also be sure you hydrate because it's going to get really warm.
Yeah, especially thanks to Jeff, to you, because if you had surgery last Friday and still in the process of recovery, you
Yeah.
just come and
Yeah.
share your time for us. Thanks so much.
Well, I was really glad to come back and show my enthusiasm for gardening. Take care.
Thank you.